Hello, everybody. Welcome to What Would Your Ideal World Be? A new podcast which examines many important people and the important things in their lives, what they think about most current trends at the moment, what they think about certain subject matters, and of course, what their ideal world would be.
As part of a special series covering the North Shropshire by-election, today's guest is councillor Suzie Akers-Smith, who is running as an independent candidate. She's also currently a councillor on Cheshire East Council, having represented the Congleton West ward since her election there in the 2019 local elections, to which she has served many roles, including being a cycling and walking champion and being the vice chair of the Southend Planning Committee there as well.
Hello?
Hi, Edward. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm not bad, actually. I'm nearly a little bit tired, I think, because of COVID, I guess. I don't know, but I'm probably just from lying around all day and, the movies.
Fair enough, don't we all?
You look very festive.
Thank you, or try my best, I suppose. Okay, you don't mind if I start, do you?
No, carry on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the first question I wanted to ask you is, you've just been elected as the MP for North Shropshire and you just entered Parliament for the first time. What is the first major policy that you seek to achieve while there, and who you work with in order to achieve that goal?
So I believe that from the places that I've been to so far, that speed of traffic is an issue for residents. It goes too fast, there's too much traffic. So I think to support the villages and the towns is to get the government to review speed limits. They haven't been reviewed since 1934. There was no basis for them in the first place. There wasn't a scientific experiment done of why it should be 30 in towns and why it should be 60. It was just a figure plucked out of somebody's head. And I think the fact that we've now got 38.5 million more vehicles on the road, they're faster, they're quicker. And it isn't just about speed of traffic killing people. There's tens of thousands of people are maimed every year. So if we could do something to make our environment safer for the residents that live in these villages, I would ask them to review speed limits. Apart from the fact they've not been reviewed for 87 years, I think it's about time that we started to protect the most vulnerable in our society. So what was the second question? Sorry.
I don't know. Just who would you work with in order to achieve that goal?
Okay.
Essentially, which MPs or people in there? If you don't
So,
want to answer.
Going back to last December, I put a motion to council about reducing speed limits, and it was fully supported by all parliamentary groups. So I would expect to work with all the MPs, especially those in rural towns, in rural constituents. But I can't see anybody not supporting reducing traffic speed, maybe the odd one or two people, but it is the biggest single issue that we're having to face, is that people drive their cars and they kill people and they get away with it. It shouldn't be allowed to happen anymore.
Especially when it seems like the speed limits, the way you're talking about, seem about as old as some of my grandparents nearly. But the next question I wanted to ask you is what first got you involved in
people? Sorry, just going back to older people, they can't rush across the road. So slowing traffic down to protect older people is also important. Yeah, but you're right.
What first got you involved in politics, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I don't mind. So my son, when he was cycling home from school one day, he heard this really loud noise and he put his hands up to his ears off his bike and he fell off his bike. So he came home crying, upset. So he went round and there was a mosquito device in this garden. Do you know what a mosquito device is?
I'm not really sure, no, so I just thought a bit dense.
It's a device that people put in their gardens to stop animals coming in, so cats and peeing on their garden. But it has the detrimental effect of only young people under 25 can hear the noise, and it's so piercing. It can be quite painful, and also it's really impressive on younger children. So children that are in pushchairs, if they hear this noise, they might start crying, but you don't know why they're crying. So I read in the paper, this is back in 2015, that the council were looking to support the police with buying mosquito devices to put in an area of the town where children congregated. So I went to the council meeting and I had done loads of research. I'd contacted the Children's Commissioner for England because there was a chap called Sir Al Ainsley Green who was championing fighting these devices that were in railway stations and places like that. Anyway, I put a proposal to council to reject the application from the police, and they did. And I walked out of the room actually, and I just felt amazing because I was able to get a full understanding of the councillors, because nobody had understood what mosquito devices were or how they worked. And I was able to get over a better understanding of the detriment, because if you move children from that space, they go to another space. So do you put another mosquito device in, and so on and so forth? So that wasn't a solution to the problem. And anyway, they rejected the application, and I got asked to stand, and then I got elected. So that was how I got involved, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind since, to be fair.
And funny enough, that leads on to my next question, actually, which is, what has it been like to be a councillor on the, if I'm not mistaken, Cheshire East Council? Am I right? Or
yeah, Cheshire East Council, so it's the neighbouring borough. And because when we came in, we increased our independent numbers to enough to become the kingmakers. We sided with the Labour group and have become the ruling authority. If, like the Labour independent group, we make all the decisions supported by the Conservatives. So I don't think anybody ever expected that to happen. So it was a bit of a whirlwind shock for everybody. And it's been really amazing because I think, given our climate change ambitions, are sort of the things that we're trying to achieve are not that dissimilar. And I'm being made the cycling and walking champion, of course. I'm massively supported in any proposals I put to council that enable people to get out of their cars and get a bit of exercise. So it's actually been a phenomenal 2 years, and the last 2 years I've engaged with a lot of the community groups, like the transition groups like Transition Wallington and Transition Winslow, and the Adapt groups, Adapt Audlam, fully supporting all their ambitions to fight climate change. And I'm trying to help them increase their provision for traffic-free cycling and improve walking and accessibility. So it's been a whirlwind. And so the two major things we've done is I've put a proposal to council for a ban on pavement parking and pavement obstruction, because that impacts on the very vulnerable people, and also to introduce 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, and that's going through council at the minute. That's taken 18 months so far, so we're going through consultation. So yeah, it's been amazing actually, and so I'm really enjoying it, is the point.
And what experiences and skills would you take from your councillor days if you were to become elected as an MP? What sort of things would you take from that role into becoming an MP? Like, what would you adapt? What skills would you adapt from being a councillor towards being an MP, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no. So what a number of things I've learned is things don't happen by like a week on Thursday, like I was expecting to have a conference a week on Thursday when I first started. It takes time. So the process of change takes time. So if you look at what the other candidates are saying they can achieve, they won't achieve that even before the next election, to reduce ambulance waiting times. It's just not an achievable target. But sorry, what was the question again? Sorry.
I'm essentially like, what if you do get elected as an MP, what sort of like skills or experiences would you have in mind when you were a councillor? What sort of stuff would you adapt from that role to being when you became an MP?
Yeah, so what I've been doing, so progressively my work has involved the MPs of our borough, because they change the rules. And so what I'm learning is, do you know what? I'm not getting the support I need from our MPs. They're not delivering what we're asking of them. So I need to become one. So I guess the transition is it's a bit of a progress, isn't it? You start off being a town councillor and then a borough councillor. You get a lot of responsibility. You go to meetings. I've just received a 500-page agenda for next week, which I've got to read.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So you learn how to speed read. You learn to focus on what's important, what you need to raise issues with, who you need to partner with to be part of those decisions. So I think for me, because it's not about what I want, it's about having the people around me to help achieve these changes and ambitions. And I think having worked with so many community groups to help them achieve their ambitions, I think I'm well placed to build that up through working with the residents of North Shropshire.
And the next question I wanted to ask is, like, why have you consistently stood as an independent candidate, both in this by-election and throughout your career as a councillor?
Well, as you know, I got elected as a Conservative for 2015 to 2019, and it became clear pretty quickly that Conservative works on, best mates, jobs for the boys or girls. It works if you're in the the position of control, you get to do whatever you want. But democracy doesn't work like that, or it's not supposed to. I think sorry, what was the question again? Sorry,
essentially, why have you consistently stood as an independent candidate, both as a councillor for part of it and now in this by-election?
Yeah, so I stood as a Conservative and I got elected, and I worked really hard with the Conservative colleagues. And about 6 months before the election, I asked them how they were going to help me achieve changes to our infrastructure or improve facilities for people to walk and cycle around. And basically they came back with, I don't know why anybody would ride a bike. That was from our health cabinet portfolio holder. We can't put any infrastructure in because we'll have to pay to maintain it. That was from the finance guy. And the response was entirely negative about trying to make change to our environment. So I thought, well, if people around that table support the same ideas, then obviously I'll be able to get policies through. So I did say to them, if you don't support me, I'll have to put independents forward. I mean, they didn't support me, and I put 9 independents forward. This is at Town Council and 2 at Borough, and 6 of us got elected at Town and 2 at Borough, and we've never had an independent councillors at Borough before. So it was a significant change, certainly in Cheshire East, and it was an amazing change. Actually, it's been great. So I've not found any negative reasons to not stand as an independent. And the other reason, so I know from my election success, is that people will vote for their party, but those people that vote for those party, they won't often vote for another party. If you vote Conservative, there's no way you'll vote for Labour. You probably wouldn't vote for Lib Dem. But what I've proven is that you will vote for an independent candidate, because they can take on anybody's policies, can't they? They can have any policies and make them their own. And also, so that's why you've actually, you don't have to partner with you don't have to whip to approve sewage to be pumped into the sea. I can't imagine anybody in North Shropshire would say, yes, let's just vote to pump sewage into the sea. Why not? Why would you do that? So as the MP for the borough, I can do exactly what is needed of me. I don't have to agree to any line. And I think with that, you've actually got a stronger voice. People think you don't have any voice, but actually I think you have a stronger voice, because you can argue or you can debate those proposals that they're planning on putting forward. So that's why I've stayed as an independent. It's proved worthwhile, and I think residents will vote for independent where they won't vote for another party. So that's what I'm hoping residents will look at, what I'm offering. It was a massive decision to put my name forward, because it wasn't an easy choice. But I thought, do you know what? It could be the only time you could give people an option. So I'm giving the residents of North Shropshire an option to vote for a different type of governance, I guess.
And do you think that your familiarity with people in North Shropshire, the fact that you're a councillor already, you're a councillor in the local area, do you think that sort of familiarity might help you in this by-election?
I am hoping so. I was raised in Staffordshire. I lived in Cheshire the last 20 years, and from what from residents I've spoken to so far, there's a lot of similarity in the issues they have as there are in Cheshire East. The high street's dying, it needs support, they feel neglected, the transport infrastructure is next to nothing. I think there's probably a bit more of a farming community here in North Shropshire, so obviously they need support. And there's also more of an elderly population, and I think they're not supported at all, actually. From what I've seen in Cheshire East, I think it's probably similar to North Shropshire. So from my experience, there's a lot I can do to help the communities progress a better town and a better environment, and hopefully, that will sing with the electors.
And forgive me if this is a slightly trivial question, but as part of your duties as councillor, you have the lovely title of being a cycling and walking champion. How did that come about, and what has that been like for you, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, do you know what? It's been absolutely amazing. It was the first time the borough have appointed a cycling and walking champion. And when I first had the meeting with the leader of the council, Sam Corcoran, I said, how big do you want me to make this? And he just said, make it your own. So I started doing these, what I call walking and cycling safaris. So I get my bike or I get my boots out and I go and walk with a local group or a parish councillor or an individual and look at the issues they have around where they live that are preventing them from either riding safely or getting from A to B, or even just riding at all. So, and I've done about 50 of these cycling and walking safaris, and the council have used them to contribute to these local transport plans that we have in place. And so because of all of the work that I've done and the support I've had from the officers and the council members, it's been an amazing role, and it's been really busy, and I have made it my own, and I've got a lot of support from the transition groups, like I say, and the adapt groups. And so I know if I need to get help for something, there's hundreds of people I can contact that give me help, and that's how I progress the ambition. It was amazing, and I really love it, and it's been great. And I'd love to bring some of that knowledge over to North Shropshire. I think there's a lot of groups in North Shropshire that would benefit from what I've learned over here in Cheshire East.
And what made you decide to stand in this by-election, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, so as I said earlier, it's the next county along. It's a shire county, so the issues that they're faced with in North Shropshire are not dissimilar to Cheshire East. And I was looking at the candidates, and then when I noticed that the Conservatives have put in a chap from Birmingham, I thought, do you know what? Because I know I think I know how people will vote for an independent rather than another party. I thought, well, if he's got a chance of being elected, maybe I can convince the electorate that I'm actually a better candidate because of my experience and because of the role that I've had and being able to engage with the community pretty quickly, actually. So, so I thought I'll give residents an alternative to a Conservative candidate, because I have been a Conservative. I understand how it all works, and I felt residents deserve that, and so that's why I put my name forward. So I'm hoping residents will go for that.
And what have been the biggest issues on the doorstep so far when you've been campaigning?
So as I mentioned, I've only campaigned in 3 towns so far because I caught COVID last week. So I've had to self-isolate now until Sunday. So I went to War, and they are concerned about the impact of HS2. They're concerned about the speed of traffic and the amount of heavy vehicles that are going to come through the village. So I've had a number of inquiries actually from the leaflet I've put out, and I've said I can, because I've working with HS2 on a different project, and I could potentially investigate that to see if we could look at an alternative route to divert the lorries around a different way. Market Drayton, they're worried about the high street, and they're worried about there's no transport connections, there's no railway, there's lack of buses and bus services, and that's one thing I've been working on with Cheshire East. The government have put out calls for funding applications for Bus Back Better to increase the number of buses in our towns and communities. So I'd really like to help to work with the council to increase the amount of funding that we could potentially get, because again, all the money goes to the cities and the shire counties just get overlooked. So so that's what I do with that.
Has the issue of sleaze been a particular stinging point so far, given all the stuff with Owen Paterson and whatnot, or has that just been more of a minor issue compared to some of the things you're talking about?
So from the residents I've spoken to so far, they feel neglected. They don't feel as if they're on the map. And so to a lady who sponsored me, I said, well, if you elect me, you'll definitely get put on the map, because this hasn't happened to an independent MP being elected before, certainly in England. So so it would definitely get them on the map. And the sleaze thing, I don't think people are that bothered, actually. You know, I mean, but there's a lot of talk in the national papers that people are bothered about it. Would it stop them voting Conservative? Not necessarily. For some people, yes, but for a lot of the people, I mean, they are completely and utterly tied to their party, and I understand that, because I was tied as a Conservative. It took a lot for me to change from being a Conservative to being an independent, because, you know, you feel as if you're being disloyal in some way, and you feel as if what can you do if you're not a Conservative? So I understand the challenge that I'm asking residents to elect me as an independent, but if they elect me, they won't be disappointed. Trust me. I will work very hard to help them. But yeah, so a little bit of sleaze, but not as much as issues like being neglected and the traffic and support for the high street.
So I don't want to talk about too much about this, but on the whole thing with sleaze, do you think it might be just like a storm in a teacup thing, or more something the Westminster cabal are interested in, as opposed to, say, the people living in the Shire counties and stuff like that?
What's the storm in a teacup? The sleaze storm?
Yeah, the sleaze stuff. Like, it's more of an interest to, say, it's Westminster Press, as opposed to, so, you know, a lot of the people in North Shropshire in themselves.
Oh yeah, I mean, because their priority is putting food on the table, keeping themselves warm, earning a living. You know, the sleaze thing, unless you read all the papers, probably the younger people are up to date with it. And I don't think young people actually vote Conservative, certainly from a place like North Shropshire, or many young people vote Conservative. You know, I think they're more open-minded to different groups, actually. Certainly, I mean, I've got 3 grown-up sons, and they are open-minded about who they vote for. They don't vote Conservative, but and I think they yeah, so I just think people want to get food on the table, earn a living, and they want better infrastructure. What's going on in Westminster, it's not a storm in a teacup, certainly from a Westminster point of view, but is it important to the residents of North Shropshire? Not really. Not when you go and look at their roads and you look at their lack of support, lack of services, the closing of hospitals. That's what's important, is getting services to the people that need it, not Boris Johnson having a load of parties.
And on that, you were talking about party loyalty. The next question I want to ask you is that, given how the seat you're running in is a safe Tory one and has been since the days of everyone was like a John Biffen in the early 80s, how do you plan to win over such voters to your side?
Yes, no, I've given that question a lot of thought, because it is a significant challenge. So my first thing was, so first of all, obviously you have to get yourself proposed. And I went over to Whitchurch, actually, and I spoke to residents and I said, would you support me? And, you know, 80% of people said they would. So because it was so easy to get residents to support me, and it was because of, that's the reason why I've put myself forward. So I obviously need to get my name known. It's an impossible task. You know, I've been working in Cheshire East for 2 years and have all of these groups. You're expected to get your name out there within 4 weeks. It's not possible. So I thought I need to get a leaflet produced. So I've bought 55,000 leaflets, which are all being distributed. So at least residents, they can read about what I've achieved so far. They can look at the things that I'd like to support. And if they want more information, they can Google my name, and pages and pages of information comes up. And I thought that's the only thing that I can do, is try and get my name out there. And when residents get to that ballot box on election day, that they think, do you know what, I'm going to vote for change. So that's what I'm asking residents to do. Don't keep voting the same way. If you keep voting the same way, nothing is going to change. So vote for change, vote for Suzie, and let's see what happens. So that's how I'm hoping to do it.
Fair enough. And on the subject of Paterson, how do you feel about his performance as an MP in the constituency of North Shropshire? And what were his strengths and weaknesses that you would take note of if you were to take over from his position?
So he had a very good relationship with the farming community, but he's been an MP for a long time, so it's you can build up your relationships over that time. He did do a good job from residents that have contacted me. He responded to emails and phone calls. He helped residents sort out problems that they had. So I think he has done a good job from the feedback that I've received. I'd like to do a better job. I want to make politics personal and support all the residents, not just the farming community. And I think I'm in a good place to do that. I've got political experience. I've got experience of negotiating and working with partner organisations. So, I think, yes, he did do a good job, but I could do a better job. Definitely.
Fair enough. He was the MP, by the way, for North Shropshire longer than I've been alive, which I'm not sure if that shows how old or young I am, but there we go.
No, that just shows you that people don't like change. It'll be hard for people to elect an independent candidate. I understand that. It took me a lot of soul searching to not be a Conservative councillor, because I knew I'd get elected. Everyone says, "Oh, you won't get elected as an independent." So I was throwing everything into the ring, if you like, because I wanted to stick up for my morals. I couldn't continue being a Conservative MP without the support of the Conservatives of what we were trying to achieve. So I had no choice but to change. And also the people that I was getting to come forward to stand, there was no way in a million years they would stand as the Conservatives. So that instead of me getting them to stand as Conservatives, I had to stand with them as an independent. And that is what took a lot of soul searching. So I understand residents' reservations about electing an independent, but I hope with what they've read about me, with the people that have been in touch with me about trying to what I would do, and the videos that I've produced, I hope people just have some faith and tick for Suzie Akers-Smith, and let's just go for it.
Mm-hmm. And this will be the last question I ask about the sleaze issue, but do you think that whole sort of issue might be able to elevate candidates like yourself to get a few more votes, perhaps, maybe, and take away votes of the Conservatives? Or do you think that tribal loyalty might see, I don't know, do you think actually that the sleaze issue might actually help independent candidates such as yourself, or just other candidates in general? And even if you don't win, would they still lose?
The Conservatives lose.
Yes, will they still lose over this issue, even if you don't win per se because of some of the anger, maybe? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think given I've got to get to know people within a few weeks, which is an impossible task, and people vote with their loyalty. They absolutely are loyal to their badge. If you're a Lib Dem, you're loyal to Lib Dems. If you're Labour, you're loyal to Labour, and never the twain shall meet. I think with the Conservatives, if they can see that I have been a Conservative, I understand how it works, I understand the values, and being a Conservative isn't all that it's cut out to be. It can't help you deliver what you're trying to deliver. It's you, when you vote for your Conservative candidate, you're voting for Boris and what he wants and his team. You're not voting for what they're claiming they can achieve at all. So I think if anything, people won't come out, that rather than not vote Conservative, if they vote independent, that would be fantastic. But I think what will happen is people will choose not to vote because they can't be bothered, for one. They're fed up of it all, and I don't think they'll vote. But what I'm hoping is people will vote for me.
And what do you think then some of these voters are so tribal in their loyalties then, given some of these controversies that we've seen recently?
Well, my view, so I voted Conservative all my life. I don't really understand why I voted Conservative. I did it because my dad did it, and when you speak to Labour supporters, they vote Labour because their dad did it and their dad's dad did it. So the history of politics is entrenched in our psyche. It's what we do, and as a Conservative, I couldn't vote for Labour, even though Labour have some really very credible candidates. I couldn't vote for Labour, but I can vote for an independent, because you can take on anybody's policies. So trying to get people to change, you just have to promote yourself, promote what you're about, promote what you'd like to achieve for the constituency and how you'd help support them. And if people are incensed enough with the Conservatives that they might think, do you know what, I'll give her a go. We've got an election in 2.5 years. If we don't like her, we don't have to elect her again. I'm hoping that wouldn't be the case, but I think if they did, I'd go around all the towns and villages and try and get to meet as many people as I could and find out what do they need me to do. And my kids are all grown up, so I'm not tied by family. My husband works away, so I can move over to North Shropshire with my dog, and it would be great. So yeah, it is, people are tied to party. They can't think any other way. Even if you told them the Prime Minister had killed somebody, they would still probably vote for the Tories.
Sounds like the sort of hereditary loyalty you get with football. Even then, that seems a bit more rational than some of this political hereditary loyalty, but that's just my opinion. I don't know.
No, it is. If I go back to when I had to choose to stand as an independent rather than a Conservative, I had to do a lot of soul searching, because I had support from the Conservatives, and when they give you support, they sort of grab you in. Do you know what I mean? And hold you there tight, almost like a death roll, if you like. But because I couldn't make progress with the role I was in, it was better for me not to be elected as a Conservative than to carry on doing the same thing. I would have been elected for another 4 years with the same people, achieving nothing. And I didn't want, because I put in so much effort, I didn't want to waste my time not making progress. So I just thought, you know what, I'll try it. Anyway, it did work. I got more votes than any other councillor, and that's part of the reason why I put myself forward. Is I know that people who have voted Conservative, they may vote for me as a former Conservative, as an independent, rather than another party. And I'm hoping the residents of North Shropshire will do that.
Mm-hmm. And despite the fact that you're not in the Conservative Party anymore, would you still identify philosophically as one, or as a Conservative in terms of your political views in general, you're just in your political views, not necessarily party views?
I think so. Apart from all the sleaze and all, the way they all stick together, I don't like that. But in general, I would say yes, I'm just off centre. I think, I have seen a new way of working though, with being with a Labour group. So it sort of makes me a little bit in the middle, really. But I'm definitely not Lib Dem. I think they're just too woolly for me, the Lib Dems. They don't like to upset anybody. So by not upsetting anybody, they don't make any decisions that are that work for me. But I think, yes, I'm definitely Conservative, but I'm also prepared to listen to and support policies on the Labour side, because I have seen a new way of working that I've actually quite enjoyed, to be fair.
The Liberal Democrats aren't interested in upsetting anybody except as their students, I suppose. But
well, yeah, they ended up charging you fees, didn't they, for going to university?
As you do, I suppose. But on that, what would if you don't mind me asking, what does it mean for you to be a Conservative, if you don't mind me asking?
What does it mean?
Yeah, from a philosophical point of view.
Well, when I was working as a Conservative in the 4 years before the 2019 election, actually it was about family. It was about being, loyalty. It was about doing everything, to support each other. But if your views are not supported by that group, then you're conflicted, aren't you? So, and that's what happened to me. I was conflicted because I couldn't get support for measures that needed to happen to fight climate change. That I decided to change the politicians, and that actually worked, because we've got 6 people elected at town council and 2 at borough, and now we're part of the ruling authority. So actually, it's worked really well.
Mm-hmm. And was working sorry, give me a second. You talked about how you were able to work better in the council with as an independent group working with Labour. How was how was it better to work with them? What were they able to do that the Conservative group weren't? Like, what specific stuff could you compromise or work with them on that the Conservative Party were too stubborn to do, it seems?
Well, the first and probably foremost was that the first thing that we did at council was to commit to fighting climate change, and that upholds everything that I believe in, and the Independent and Labour group, and I don't believe the Conservatives would have done that. And the other thing that we had coming out of in 2019 is we'd have 4 years of Tory sleaze in our own council. There was lying going on, there was not quite cash for questions, but air quality monitoring lies going on. There was all sorts of stuff that was happening, and I think it kept happening because the Conservatives know no matter how badly they behave, they still get elected because people are tied to their to the party badge. They're tied to the Conservatives. So because of all that sleaze as well, that kind of helped me make a decision of why I shouldn't stand with the party I've supported all of my life. So that was it really. There was so much nonsense, and they've been elected for years and years and years. So we were sort of faced with a position that North Shropshire now, but at a borough level, we had to choose between independents or Conservative and Labour, and I think their majority went from something like 68 to 34. So it's a massive, massive, massive political change, and it's been really great for certainly my experience as a borough councillor and the support that we get to fight climate change, which is really important to me.
Mm-hmm. And on that subject about climate change, why do you think that Boris Johnson, who claims to be fighting all this sort of stuff in terms of climate change, why do you think that under his tenure the Conservative Party is still pursuing stuff like, say, HS2, for example? Why do you think there's such a seems to be a massive contradiction of values there, at least from what I can see?
Well, first of all, these decisions are not just made by one person. Highways England and HS2 are massive, massive businesses that are supporting massive projects. And they've already sort of semi-committed. They're not a 4-year term or a 5-year term project. They're 10, 20, 30-year projects. So, they can't just, once they've invested, there's a point of no return, isn't there, of investment? I think in HS2, they've spent, I don't know, 20 million already?
Yeah, something ridiculous like that, yeah.
And also the cost of it has gone up exponentially from 30 million to 120 billion or whatever. It's just an exponential amount of money. So there gets to a point of no return where they've invested so much money, to then not do it would be counterintuitive. And also the levelling up agenda, I think there's a lot riding on the development of HS2 for a start. So certainly the rail connections and the inward investment. But I mean, just going on about HS2, we can't stop it now. I mean, we can't stop the route up to Croom, but we can work with them to improve our infrastructure for green projects. So, and I know HS2 are dead keen to tick that box, that green agenda box, and we'll be looking to them to support projects that we'd like to put forward.
Mm-hmm. And do you think maybe some of this backlash of some of these projects, like some of the things we're discussing, might see more people turn on the Conservatives, like we saw in, say, Cheshire and Amersham, for example? Do you think that sort of result might inspire like others, like, say, North Shropshire, to vote for someone else other than the Conservatives and sort of take away some of these safe seats, seemingly?
I'd like to think so, because if I didn't think that, then, there would be no point of me standing. I think when I weighed up, 1, all the sleaze, 2, who was standing anyway, 3, my electoral success over the last 6 years and what I've achieved in the council, and 4, my commitment to supporting the residents. I think given the massive commitment I've put into this campaign, I think people might. I'd like to think they would. I really would. And if I was a North Shropshire resident, I would definitely not vote for the Tories, and I would vote for me.
Fair enough. And on that front, ever since you left the Conservative Party, actually, have things for them actually, has their performance gotten better or worse, do you think? In terms of like a lot of these issues you're talking about, because you talked about how seized they were, like, a couple of years ago in terms of your own local group. Have they gotten better or worse, if you don't mind me asking, in terms of all that sort of stuff?
Well, actually, because they know the things that I support are vote winners, trying to make our pavements safer for people who use pavements, trying to reduce speed limits to make our roads safer. They're actually supporting everything I'm trying to do. So because they know it wins votes. So they are actually behaving better, definitely. So they're trying to take the wind out of my sails, really, by taking projects that are mine and making their own. And that's fine. That just, you need support for when you want things to happen. You can't do it by yourself. Do they behave better? I'm not so sure.
Mm-hmm. And do you think maybe if candidates like yourself won, that might, enforce us to sort of like change their behaviour and so on a lot of these issues? Because you talk about how they've acted so, brazenly in a lot of this stuff because they felt they've always been safer, they could always win these seats. Do you think if more candidates like yourself won, that a lot of these seats started to go the other way, a lot of these supposed safe Tory seats, that actually it could see them actually clean up their act maybe on some of these issues? Do you think?
I think if the residents of North Shropshire voted me to be their MP, that would send a significant shockwave to the government, to the Conservative Party, because they no longer are safe in any seat. Because if you can change an ultra safe Conservative seat, you can actually change anything. So I think it would send massive shockwaves to the government. I think they'd have to consider their actions, of how they behave. I'd like to think that the backbench MPs are going to be starting to rally around rather than just support the party. Start thinking about their residents and what do they want. But yeah, I definitely think if the residents of North Shropshire elected me to be their MP, it would make worldwide news, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I know actually it was like worldwide news.
And on that front, do you think actually that given some of the backbench discontent with Boris Johnson that we've seen over the last few days, if I'm not mistaken, do you think like if someone like you won, that would actually just increase their discontent and give them a bit more confidence, so to speak, to either, I don't know, get rid of him or put him in his place? Do you think?
Oh God, Jed, if the residents of North Shropshire elected me to be their MP, I think, especially as I was a Conservative beforehand, I think a lot of the MPs that support Boris Johnson would start questioning their morals, and why would they continue to support somebody that lies, that cheats, that doesn't tell the truth, that lines his friends' pockets with money from contracts? I mean, why would you keep supporting somebody that keeps being in the press for not good things? We haven't been discussing governance of this country for a while. We're just discussing how the Conservatives keep failing the country. So I just hope the residents of North Shropshire can see that, and if they can, it'll be a really interesting day. Actually, the election day will be great.
And what do you think that speaks to of the Conservative Party, that someone like Boris Johnson has become their leader? Because I remember all the articles that came out about all the buzz about him possibly being elected, people like Simon Heffer, people like Matthew Paris, who's a former Conservative MP, saying it shows how intellectually sort of bankrupt the party is. Do you think that is true? Do you think the fact that they elected shows that side of them?
Why did they choose Boris Johnson?
Yeah, what do you think that speaks to in the Conservative Party, given a lot of the legitimate questions that people have about his personal life and all the rest of it?
I mean, you actually struggle to understand why they elected him in the first place, don't you? Because one, I mean, he was a hack, wasn't he? He was a journalist. I used to read his column in the Telegraph, actually. Two, he doesn't come over as an MP. He doesn't have that stature that you would expect of an MP to have. He mentions Peppa Pig. Who does that? And I think actually he's playing a very, very smart game, because like when he came to North Shropshire recently, he got the name of his Conservative candidate wrong. He called him
Really?
he called him Shaftesbury Hughes instead of Shaftesbury Hurst, and I think he did that on purpose. So I think he's playing us all for fools. So he knows that when he does or says something wrong, it gets reported in the press. And as you know, generally, good press and bad press, they're equally beneficial to a degree. So I think he does things because they get reported in the press, because it's people know they're in the press, but they might not always know the reason why they're in the press, and they just think, oh, they're doing a good job. But I think he's playing a very smart game. He knows what he's doing, and he's in it to win it. But is he a good candidate to be the Prime Minister? Certainly not anymore. I don't think. I think he's gone past his sell-by date.
And there are some people like Peter Oborne, if I'm not mistaken, who's probably the most blatant about this, that have compared him to sort of like a British Donald Trump. Do you think those comparisons are fair?
Boris Johnson compared to Donald Trump.
Yeah, do you think those comparisons are fair or not really?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump was an absolute well, I don't think I'd compare him to Donald Trump. Maybe Mickey Mouse.
Okay, I'm not sure whether that's better or worse, but there we go. And do you think like there are people who've also talked about people, especially people who've known him and all the rest of it, who say like his persona, this sort of like larger than life sort of clownish persona as we talked about, is just an act so he could, hide his real sort of like power hungry intentions?
He's definitely hidden his power hungry intentions. I mean, you only have to look at the articles that have been put out in the last couple of weeks. Everything he does is intentional. He doesn't forget words, he doesn't forget speeches. He's a very, very clever politician. Everything he does is intended, and he knows the consequences of everything that he does. There's no way that he wouldn't. Nobody gets to that position that doesn't know what they're doing. He definitely knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. And there's also a lot of talk, if I'm not mistaken, like if they do try and oust him, that they'll try and replace with someone like Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak. Do you think those people would be better or worse as Prime Minister, and better or worse for the country, do you think?
Better or worse than Boris Johnson?
Yes.
Well, I guess they'd definitely be better, but obviously I don't know what they stand for, so without knowing a bit more about them, I'm not sure, but they definitely come with more credibility than, Boris. He's now known as probably the biggest liar in history. How many other MPs can have that to their CV? There's no way he can now not be known as a liar, and everything he says could be a lie, and his credibility has gone out the window. If you look at the COVID-19 new rules he wants to bring in, people are saying, well, I'm not going to bother. If they're not going to bother, why should I bother? And the people that have died from it and their families that are still suffering from that loss, he should really hang his head in shame. He should.
And if I'm not mistaken, some MPs actually yesterday in the House of Commons were actually calling him out for like these double standards. I think the most blatant were Philip Davis and William Ragg. And just one little anecdote quickly. You were talking about like how he's probably the biggest liar as an MP. I thought maybe Robert Maxwell might have taken that title, but I don't know.
He wasn't an MP.
Oh, wasn't he? I thought he was a Labour MP at one point.
Robert Maxwell.
Yeah.
Oh, not the. I was thinking of the newspaper guy. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing on that is like I've had a lot of people on the show, like people who are conservative ideologically, but who really don't like the Conservative Party and all the rest of it for reasons that you described. Do you think that over the next few years we'll see perhaps like a more of a sort of shift away by voters who are maybe sort of centre-right, away from the Conservative Party to say candidates more like yourself and other sort of independent Conservative candidates, or to other like minor right-wing parties? Do you think that could be an exercise that we could see over the next few years?
Yeah, I think if you take Cheshire East as an example, and Shropshire Council actually, there has been an increase in independent candidates and who's been elected. So it's only going to grow. And, you know, when we've held meetings, if I compare our independent meetings to Conservative meetings, they're fair. They're, we debate things in a reasonable way. There's no fighting. It's completely opposite to what I've been used to. So it's a much more democratic way of working. I think, you know, there isn't any less independents getting elected. There's more and more get elected each year. And if you take Frome Council, which I think is the first council to be all independent councillors, you know, they've written a couple of books actually, and I take a lot from what they've achieved, and they achieve by working together, not just one person saying, well, this is what I want, let's just do it. They work together, they form a democracy, and it works really, really well. So I really do hope that I hope if the residents of North Shropshire elect me, it will inspire others to come forward and put their names forward, because one, you know, it probably costs about £1,500 to stand. If you take the cost of the leaflet and other expenses and the cost of applying, so it isn't open to everybody. And I feel so strongly about this opportunity that I was prepared to invest in that. And if I don't get elected, then, you know, that was my a risk that I took. But I wanted the residents of North Shropshire to have that option, and I hope they take it.
Mm-hmm. And do you think also on that, one of the problems currently with the Conservative Party just in general is the fact that a lot of people refer to it as sort of like a chumocracy? I mean, especially if you've seen over the last few days, like there were articles in the Spectator and the Times related to James Forsyth because his wife and what's her name, the former press secretary, laughed at people, and then they rushed to defend her because of actually, and they pretended this was some sort of impartial thing, like there's people attacking her. Do you think this one of the problems with the Conservative Party is that it's seen as a chumocracy by a lot of people?
Oh yeah, definitely. If you look at, is it Ed Oldfield, the young guy that was on the news yesterday? You know, he went to a private school. His dad was a former Lord Lieutenant. He lives in a seat. You know, it definitely is chumocracy. They, you know, elect all their friends. They get people that they like in seats that are safe seats because they know they get elected. It definitely is a chumocracy, and I think it's time for change. I think the residents of North Shropshire have this opportunity to change politics, and I think if they choose that, I think that will inspire many other people to stand as independent candidates, and younger as well. Actually, there's quite yeah, definitely.
And do you think that maybe one thing that might undo the Conservative Party in the end is the fact that it's become, a lot of it, especially as establishment, has become very titled, very sort of like cut off and all the rest of it, similar to how we saw with the Labour Party vote collapse in like 2019. Do you think something similar could happen to the Conservative Party within the next few years and maybe in the next general election or two?
What happened to them in terms of election?
Yeah, as in like the Labour Party in 2019, their vote share, especially all their safe areas, collapsed because a lot of them felt that they were really out of touch with their constituents and became a little bit too sort of like brazen with the fact that they felt that they could take advantage of these voters. Do you think that something similar could happen to the Conservative Party in the long run?
I think you need independence to stand, because, as I've said before, people that are completely committed to their party, they won't vote for another party. They can't. It's not in their DNA, but they will vote for an independent candidate. And if they come with skills and a credibility that people feel they can elect, I definitely think they will. I think if the residents of Shropshire elected me as an independent MP, the ripples that will send through government will last for years, absolute years. It will be just unheard of, wouldn't it? It's never happened before. It would be unheard of. It would be a real you know, bow to their arrow to their bows.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. And one of the last questions I wanted to ask you is that if you were to lose this by-election, what do you plan for your political future?
So if I didn't win next Friday, then my political future will carry on. It won't stop. I've got a meeting on Wednesday, a full council. I've got outstanding projects that I'm working on with residents, and supporting the residents is probably the most important thing that I could, well, it is the most important thing that I can do. So I've supported them before, I'll support them afterwards. And if I can support the residents of North Shropshire, I'd love to do that. But if they don't want me, then I will just go back to doing what I do best, and that's working with the residents to make change and get stuff done.
Fair enough. And the penultimate question I wanted to ask you, and this is the title of the show, and I ask all my guests who come on, is what would your ideal world be?
What would my ideal world be?
Yes.
Oh my God, is there? I don't think there is an ideal world, is there? I mean, because when you have yin, you have yang. So for every bad person, you have a good person, and for every good thing that happened, bad things happen. So you just, for me, my ideal world is that I don't suffer loss before I have to. I don't suffer illness. So I try to look after myself by being fit and encourage others to get fit, keeping my weight under control, and just trying to be happy. Actually, I think you have to just be happy with what you've got as much as you can, and if you get more than that, then you can be even happier. I think my dad taught me a really good lesson. You know, I've got an arthritic knee. It doesn't work. It's worn out. So, and whenever I used to go and see him and complained about it, he says, just be glad you've only got one arthritic knee.
Fair enough. And yeah, thank you for coming on, and I hope you recover from COVID, by the way. And if anyone wants to find out more about your campaign or more about yourself, where can they find all this information about you? What links do they need to go to?
Well, they can send me an email at suzie.akers-smith@sky.com and ask me questions. They can read my Twitter feed and make comments on there if they want to, or they can ring me up, and my number's on my leaflet, which is on my Twitter feed, so they can give me a ring.
Okay, sure. Thank you for coming on today, and yeah, Merry Christmas, and hope you get, and good luck with your campaign.
And thank you for having me, and that hat suits you, by the way.
Thank you.
You
Thank you
need
very
a
much.
beard and you can become Santa.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and share this video, as well as subscribe to the Ed Interviews YouTube channel, and also the Ed Interviews BitChute channel, and also look at my stuff on Mixcloud as well. I have more of this content coming in, and also subscribe to my Patreon subscribe star as well for more guest requests, as well as free copies of my old books. Until then, see you next time, guys.